Welcome to this week's PainFree Podcast. And we have the lovely 𝐈𝐚𝐳 Finding Our True Selves with Nature. And I met Ian just recently in Camp Out over in South Wales. Really beautiful events, full of lovely talks and all sorts of workshops, all about healing and health. And Ian was there. And I joined one of Ian's talks. And as he was talking about going to nature, he took us out to a nature area, and he kind of drew me in, and I suddenly realized, thought, I'm in nature. I'm in it by his talk and the way that he just explained everything. I just thought, I'm in it. Very, very important. And I'll leave Ian to explain all about what's all that about, what happened there. So Ian, can you please tell us, who are you? How did you, what's this nature thing for you? How did you get into it all?
Who am I? That's a question I've been
Yeah,
asking myself for 63 years. Who am I? I'm only really now beginning to get a sense of who I am. I don't think I'll ever know who I am. I might be surprised, but I'm getting a sense of self. When I was a child, I loved nature. I loved playing in nature. And I used it as a playground, but I also used it as a sanctuary. There were only 3 channels on the television then. And if I didn't want to be at home for whatever reason, or I'd had a really bad day at school, I would escape. I would just go off into nature. And I had a hill where I lived behind. And there was also a tree I used to be able to see from my bedroom window. And I always used to, if I couldn't go out, I used to sit in the window and look at this tree and imagine climbing to the top of the tree and just being hidden in all the branches. It was a great big pine tree, cedar tree that I could see. I never did climb it, thankfully, because I probably at that age, I may well have fallen out of the tree. But for me, it was an escapism. And what I recognized was that I could actually physically escape into nature, but I could also escape into nature mentally. I could kind of almost go into a trance, something I now call natural mindfulness, which is I could just disassociate, disconnect from what was going on around me, because often I couldn't handle what was going on around me. I got overwhelmed as a child quite easily. I was very sensitive as a child till I learned to hide that. But I recognized at an early age that nature was somewhere I could escape to, either physically escape to, play in it, hide in it, or I could just take myself to it just by thinking about being in nature. And then I forgot that. I grew up, I got a job, I went to college, got a job. I did quite well. I got married, I had children. I climbed the corporate ladder. It seemed the more children I had, the more money I had to earn. Every time we were just about doing well, we bought another house. It was the 80s, and it was very easy. It's very unlike today. You could get on the property ladder very easily. So I was on the property ladder and I was on the career ladder. And one of the things I sort of say to put what happened to me into a nutshell was I kind of say I climbed the corporate ladder. I did as I was told. I was good at what I did. I tried to do the right things. I tried to please people. And I managed to climb the corporate ladder. And I say one day I realized it was leaning against the wrong wall. And I fell off and found myself in nature. Now, it wasn't quite as simple as that. It was a long, long journey. But this idea of I found myself in nature that's where I got an inkling. I got a glimpse of my true self, my true nature. And that journey was a horrible journey. It was a journey filled with loss and pain, emotional pain. I'm quite tough. I was born in 1961, so I was a latchkey kid. It was difficult as children, but so I can tolerate quite a lot of physical pain. But emotional pain is my Achilles heel. That's the thing where I struggle. And when just want to just switch slightly to when I met Althea, because you said lovely things about meeting me. But when I met Althea, we went on the walk, but I also then went and listened to Althea talking about her pain-free method. And one of the things that 𝐜𝐸𝐴 makes sure we all take away from that is that pain is a message that needs to be heard, has to be heard. And that really struck with me. And I actually used her method in there. And you know about this because I told you about it. I used the method because I had a lot of pain. I had some cramp in my legs. I'm not going to tell you about that now. But what it did for me is that the method worked. And I thought, this is wonderful. This is something that I resonate with. And the method worked almost instantly. And so what it struck me really was, for me, I recognize the emotional pain I've had in my life, but what was the message? What came to me was, what is the message that needs to be heard for why I get so much emotional pain, why I'm so sensitive to things? And for me, that message became clearer and clearer over sort of the last 15 years, is that I was out of alignment with my true nature. I was no longer the person I was born to be. I'd become somebody who was living my life based on the expectation of others, or my perception of what the expectation of others was. So I was so far away from the person I am now that I think I'd become disconnected. And for me, I love this idea of dis. Dis means the absence of. I like to think of the word dis as the absence of. So dis-ease is the absence of ease. Disheartened is the absence of heartedness. Disinterested is the absence of interest, an inability to be curious. Disillusioned, the absence of illusion. And many of us are feeling quite disillusioned these days, I find, because there is an absence of illusion. And for me, my illusions have always been hope. It's what I hope will happen. It's what I believe might happen. And, you know, I've always been taught, my mum taught me I had a guardian angel on my shoulder that would look out for me and look after me. And I used to hope that was true, because often the way I was living my life, you know, I was coming up against brick walls and things and thinking, oh, how can I keep going like this? So that disillusion is the absence of illusion. And disconnection is the absence of connection. So the antidote to feeling disconnected is to learn to become connected again. And so I believe the message that I need to hear, and I've needed to hear all my life, is to reconnect with my true nature. And I discovered about 10 years ago now, I discovered that I could connect with my nature and understand that connection when I was with nature. And I say with nature rather than in nature, because so many people are in nature. They're spending time in nature. I don't spend time in nature. I invest time in nature. And so what I decided to do was to start showing people how to invest quality time, energy, and attention with nature. And words are really important. And 𝐜𝐸𝐴, you'll say the same, you know, how we put our words together is really important. I mean, putting words together is actually called spelling. So putting words together is actually magical. And we can all be very mindful of how we use words. And what I've discovered over the last 10 years and beyond that is a way of being able to describe my experience when I'm in nature and with nature, my connection to nature, my understanding of that experience and that connection and what it means, and then tuning into what I call nature consciousness, which is insight. I believe we are on the brink of an evolution in consciousness, which is what I call nature consciousness. And so for the last 10 years, I've been guiding people through walks, just a walk to come in and be mindful in nature, running training courses to train other people how to guide people into nature, and setting up my own community where I've invited people to come and join that community, Nature Connection World, so we can all start creating and growing more nature conscious communities online and offline. And so, yeah, that was probably a long way, Arthur, of kind of saying who I am and what I do. I still don't know who I am, but I've got a sense of who I am. And one of the things I realized is when you have a sense of who you are, that's point A. If you want to get anywhere in life, you need to know where you're starting from. So if you have a sense of self, if you are connected to your true self, your true nature, then it's much easier to get a sense of direction, and it's much easier to have a sense of purpose, of where, you know, the path you're going to take and your why for taking that path. And I do that. I try and do that every single day. Walk that path, walk my path closer to my true nature, and encourage, invite, urge others to do the same.
And I'm interested to now we had somebody talking about nature, forest bathing. So
Yeah.
this is something. How do you? How is it different to forest bathing or just being in nature and enjoying nature?
Yeah, I'm friends with a lot of the people that created forest bathing in America and in Japan. I have friends who are involved in forest bathing and forest therapy, and we've sat and had this discussion and about, you know, what am I doing, what are they doing, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to give people access to nature anywhere. So it wasn't necessarily, you didn't have to be in a forest. And it's the same principle in terms of you are connecting to the atmosphere of a forest, or the atmosphere of a beach, or the atmosphere of a hillside walk, or your garden, or a park, or a plant on your window. You can just connect. And to me, I called it natural mindfulness because it was about being something you could do naturally. You didn't have to learn this. You know, it's not for me to teach anybody to connect with nature and share nature connection. It's to just rediscover that ability. As I said earlier on, when I sat in my bedroom window, I was really practicing natural mindfulness when I was imagining being on top of that tree. In my exams, when I was looking out the window, imagining that I wasn't in an exam room and I was out there on, you know, playing in the fields by where my school was, which is a housing estate now, by the way. It was that was a form of natural mindfulness that I didn't call it that then. My teachers would have probably called it daydreaming. I would have probably been labeled as having some kind of attention deficit disorder now. Certainly not being able to focus on what the teacher was teaching me, but being very easily distracted and focusing on what I was interested in, which was outside the school. What I did discover then actually was that that I could remember when I was in that state, a very calm, relaxed state of natural mindfulness, very aware. I could actually remember the teacher talking in the classroom. And so when I did take my exams, I surprisingly passed because I wasn't stressed. I'd gone in there thinking, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know the answers. I didn't get a chance to revise because my home life was a little bit dysfunctional. But when I sat down and relaxed and looked out the window, I could suddenly remember what the teacher had said in the classroom. And I wrote that and then just used a little bit of creativity, as you can do. You know, you just elaborate it a little bit, you know, and add a little bit to it. And I passed exams that my teachers never thought I would pass. I didn't cram and I didn't swat. I just relaxed and accessed what I would call a natural ability to learn. I think we can all learn things. But sorry, I've gone off the thing about forest bathing. But forest bathing, for those that don't know, is just going into a lovely forest and breathing in the atmosphere. So you're smelling the forest, and you can taste what's in the forest if you know what you're tasting. You can listen. You use all of your senses to have a whole sensory experience within the forest, and then be silent and be meditative and contemplative. Only using your senses. And what I've discovered is that when we go to the senses first, the mind the mind quietens down, and it leaves space for the heart to connect. Most of what happens in life that I find very unnatural is that we go to thoughts first, we go to the mind first, we allow the mind to take the lead. And really, we need to be going back to allowing our senses to guide us, because senses have been guiding us for a lot longer than our minds have, according to experts. But I think the evolution of the mind happened a lot later than the evolution of our ability to sense, because there are creatures that don't have half of the capacity we think we have, and they sense their way, and they do a better job of it than we do. The mitochondrial fungal networks underneath a forest are, it's amazing how they sense their way and create connections and links. We tend to get lost. We get lost as humans. It's one of the downsides to being disconnected from your nature, is you will get lost.
Disconnection from your nature, isn't it? And it's just lovely how you went full circle, and then you were brought back to nature. But then that's what you started when you were a little boy. That's what soothed and helped you and guided you in exams and stressful situations. You connected. So it's more about a connection, and so allowing that connection to support and guide you, whether it's exams or whatever else. And it's about coming back to your nature, who you are then.
To me, that's the foundation is that. And I when I say I found myself in nature, I discovered my nature through loss, through great loss, loss of material wealth, loss of material things that I'd learned to value and I'd learned to worship, but then loss of loved ones, loss of my parents in 2002, which you can't ever win back. I was of the mind that if you lose, you can always win back something better. If you lose money, you can win back more. If you lose somebody in a relationship, you can get a better relationship. If you lose, you can win. But there are some things you lose that you can't win back. I can't win back a head of hair. I mean, it's gone now. I can't. I at one point thought I'd lost my mind. You can't win back a mind. But the other opposite of lose is find, and that was a kind of one of the messages that I think my pain at the time of loss was trying to remind me that, rather than fixate on trying to win, why don't you learn what finding is about? Because there's two opposites of lose. Opposite of lose is find. Opposite of lose is win. There's two opposites of right, wrong, and left, and we never really explore some of those other areas.
Interesting perception.
Yeah, I started really exploring, well, what can I find through this loss? Having now lost this, what can I now find? And I found myself. I found the self that was left when everything else had gone. So, I no longer had the same roles and responsibilities. I was no longer seen. My mask had slipped. You often hear people saying, I lost face. I mean, I lost face big time. Talk about be vulnerable. I couldn't hide my mistakes any longer. They were right out there for people to see. And
are you talking about sort of generally in your life or in your work at the time?
Yes, going bankrupt and losing everything, and people knowing that my relationship wasn't as great as people thought it was, and in my job, knowing that I couldn't cope with the pressure of that job, and then just saying, well, okay, I can't. This is me. I've lost. But then the you that's left when you've lost everything else is actually your truth. It's your truth. It's your true nature. It's the, people say you can't fall any further. When you hit rock bottom, it hurts. When I fell off the ladder, it hurts.
Yeah.
But actually, I knew where there was stability. I could feel the ground beneath my feet. And this is the thing I always say to people now: when you go out and invest attention and energy, and you invest time with nature, you get certainty, because those birds you are hearing are actual sounds, natural sounds. They are true. The ground beneath your feet, whatever you touch, whatever you smell, whatever you see in a natural environment is the truth. How much of what we see and we hear and we feel today are lies, are somebody
Absolutely.
else's truth, somebody else trying to manipulate our thoughts and our feelings, not for our benefit, but for the benefit of themselves. And life is full of that. And so to me, being able to find that grounding certainty, if ever I have to make a decision, the last thing I do is go on the internet and work out how to do it. I will go out into nature. I go out into nature and I commune with nature. And I'll share how I do. I'm going to share how I do that with people so that they can take that methodology away. But for me, I found a methodology, I found a process that works for me. And instead of going to what do I think, and then from what I think, how do I feel? And then from how do I feel, how do I act and react? I found a way to go to what do I know? And then how do I feel? And then what do I think? So I moved thinking from priority, number one, down to number three. I reorganized my senses, my connection, my thoughts. So my feelings is my connection. So my senses, my feelings, my thoughts, and my beliefs, I reorganized them. And I started with what I could sense, what I knew, what I knew for certain. And sometimes that answer to that was, I know nothing. I don't know. I don't know.
I knew nothing.
But I was certain I knew nothing. I was absolutely certain I knew nothing. And I found a sense of relief, a sense of liberation, and I found a sense of grounding when I turned around and said, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm okay with that. I don't have to know.
So was it a sort of build up, and then you got to the bankruptcy stage, and then this difficult of kind of breaking to then reconnecting to yourself. And these days, do you use it when you're stressed, or when you don't know something, you need answers, or just need to reconnect, or is it every day, or what's your sort of?
I practice every day because I have a dog, so she needs to be walked 3 times a day, and so I walk. A little bit like Charlie. We've got Charlie on with Sarah. Charlie's walked. Sarah and Charlie have both walked with me. He's a lovely guide. He's a lovely natural mindfulness guide. You just follow dogs, and they're in the present moment. They're not thinking about tomorrow or worrying about yesterday. And yeah, so I'm out with my dog, and I ground myself. I notice what's going on around me. Most days it's very easy for me to do because I do it as a practice. But there are some days when I go for a walk because I'm overwhelmed. I go for a walk because I'm angry. I go for a walk because I'm really upset about something. I go for a walk because I feel lost. And that's my go-to thing. I go for a walk, or I come down into my garden and I just go through a process of reconnecting to nature, but really reconnecting to my true nature through nature. Nature. It's very interesting. We always think of nature as being out there, but nature's in here. Nature's within us. I always talk about 2 journeys when I guide people towards a greater connection to nature. There's 2 journeys. There's the outer journey, which is exploring nature, but there's the inner journey, which is finding, healing, understanding, and releasing our true nature, which is an inner journey, which is an inner natural journey. Both
we are nature. We are nature, isn't it?
Well, there is no disconnect. You're right. There is no absence of connection. What there is an absence of conscious connection. We're not consciously aware we're connected, but you only have to look at a child. My grandson is nearly 2 now, and his mum, my daughter, was getting very frustrated because we were just leaving the farm park we were at this afternoon, and we went through the woodland to come out, and he had to say hello and goodbye to all the trees, because that's what he does. He goes over and he gives the trees a big old hug when he goes in, and he waves goodbye to every tree and blows them a kiss. And he loves that. He loves that more than playing on the stepping stones and the climbing frames they put in the woodland. He just wants to connect with the trees. So
chip off the old block.
He's already connected. He's already connected. That connection hasn't been lost. He doesn't see it as any different. Connecting to a tree is a living being in the same way as my pet dog. My dog is a living being. It's a living being. And why wouldn't children want to connect with living beings?
And how do you feel when you go out all the time anyway because of your dog, but you go out because of all these different minds you feel, and you go out there and you're going to take us through it in a moment, a sample of it. But so it's not like the forest bathing, like you're connecting with your senses. It's something different. Is it listening and feeling, or just allowing nature to change you? I mean, I know if I'm in a bad mood, or I've got something in my mind or something, as I walk along and as I'm in nature, I just start to feel calmer. I start to gather my thoughts. I start to just breathe. And partly it's the physical, isn't it? It's the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. You're breathing in all that oxygen, letting go of the carbon dioxide, you're letting go of that stress. The green is very calming. It's heart centered. The heart is green, the chakra is green, and it's very calming to be in nature. But is that the same sort of thing? Am I getting it? What you do?
Well, I have to say I've been in nature sometimes, and I've not felt calm. There are some places I go into, I go, "Ooh, I'm not so sure of this." I think the thing about nature, it's what's the relationship you have with it. And to me, I've been developing a relationship with the natural world, but with the purpose of developing and growing a stronger relationship with the nature in me, and aligning it. So I would say it's only different from forest bathing because the way forest bathing has been presented to people, to the general public, is based on I want to be careful how I say this, but it's based on
different, isn't it?
a new health and well-being practice, which, as we know with many health and wellness practices, become adapted, maybe manipulated in a little way, and it becomes more about profit. It becomes more about.
So what you're doing is you're just being in nature and feel it, and allow you observe things. You feel what you do. You might be in a bad mood still, but you're in nature. So you're walking along stones, and you're being affected physically and emotionally, and it's like when you're a little boy, you said that that's where your true nature was. It was daydreaming and being not in that classroom.
Yeah, I was the same at work, and I'm kind of the same now as well. There's certain places I don't want to be in, but I've got to take responsibility for things, and I do go into places for a while, but I know I've got somewhere I can go to when I feel that way. But I think the thing is what I'm talking about here is my path. I think it's really important. I only ever share my path. And if people resonate with it, then I welcome them to walk with me along that path for a while, until such time as they can then notice their own path and then start walking their own path. And I have this in everything I share and run and teach on my training courses is very much about adopt what resonates with you and what works for you, and adapt, until such time as you can adapt it so that it's more aligned with your nature. So there is no right way. Then to me, to say there's a certain way that you have to practice connecting with nature, I mean, that's just so unnatural to do that. To me, it's, I found a path. It works for me, and I'll share it with you. And if it works for you, adopt that. But always be ready to adapt it as your path kind of manifests for you. And I find my path is opening up as I walk it. I'm becoming more and more consciously aware of it. But I'm shining a very small light. I'm trying to illuminate the path, but I'm only shining a small light on it. And but the more I walk, the wider that beam gets.
Ah,
And the more of us that walk in the same forest on our own paths, illuminating our own paths, the forest will eventually light up. And I kind of love that idea of us being illuminators, illuminating the path.
beautiful, beautiful. And
Guides illuminate the way. Yeah.
beautiful. And when we were in that event together, you took us up through fields and sensing things and just enjoying the scene. And we noticed different things going on. Like you were talking, and then suddenly this whole space of light came up behind you. That was behind the tree, wasn't it? We had the tree moment. This stunning just tree, and then the light that came up behind it was like, oh, look at that. We noticed things, and then you took us to that ancient tree in the middle of the woodlands, and you said you went up there about 8 times or something, and each time the atmosphere and the group that you took, there was a different vibe, different kind of vibe about it. I mean, I remember. I mean, I guess I'm getting it. I think that it's all about aligning with your true nature, but with nature, your true nature, but with nature, and I really like it. And it's so I feel so supportive and nurturing and encouraging. And I remember when I was a little girl, we used to get smacked. We're not allowed to do that anymore, but we used to when we were little. I'm not sure you know. And we had this great big willow tree in the front garden, and I used to hide under there, and nobody could find me. Mum and Dad couldn't find me to go and tidy my room or whatever it was. And I used to go under the willow tree, and it was all dark, and nobody could find me. I was just a little girl, and there was all these willow bits from the willow tree, fallen down, and it was very protective, and it was quiet, and it was all dark actually, and it was but I just felt, well, that was my little moment of doing I don't know, reaching to nature to support and protect me and just give me a quiet space of to-do list or whatever. And I remember another time I was in outside my school. There's a massive big field, and I used to do daisy chains. And in this time, for some reason, I was left there. I was only about 3 years old, but for some reason, they left me there. And I was not too long, but but it seemed like for ages, and I was there alone. It was like wonderful. And the breeze on the grass and the daisy chains going on, and there were these great big poplar trees and the crows going on. And even today, I notice I've just come back on a long trip on the motorway, drive, and traffic. And we had a pit stop at a service station, and it's all lights and McDonald's and everything else. And I'm just trying to keep my scent. And as we come out, I'm just thinking, oh, thank God we're outside of this now. I heard these little birds going on. I thought, oh, thank you. So is it kind of like that? You're just tuning into nature, and it's a bit different than what you're saying.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's well, you've just beautifully done part of the process, which is finding your voice to share your connection with nature. So people often say to me, oh, you're the guy that loves nature. And I say, well, yes, but I love sharing it more. I love finding something in nature, receiving healing from nature, gaining new understanding from nature, getting insights from nature. But then the most important thing is to share it. And what I think is another wonderful thing for healing and well-being and health is us being able to share our truth, share something that people don't seem to share these days. One of the reasons I set up Nature Connection World was to give people the opportunity to come on and share their pictures of their experience in nature, share poems about nature, to connect and to comment on each other's posts, so that we learn to be able to speak about our deep experiences, our deep connections, our deep understandings, and our deep insights about nature. And for me, probably where I found my voice was when I found a cause that was greater than my fear of speaking up and speaking out. And I had a lump removed from my throat back in 2009, and ever since then I haven't been able to stop talking. And ever since then, I've never felt my throat constrict when I had to talk about something that I found was highly emotional, or I was sensitive about, or felt vulnerable about. When I was a child, my throat would constrict when I tried to say what I really meant, or how I felt, and I would choke. And then after 2009, and that was surgically removed, um, I have absolutely no worry about whether
Interesting.
somebody will think I'm talking a load of woo woo, or they think I'm daft. I have it,
Interesting.
it
It's
doesn't.
interesting, isn't it? Building up in here, and you couldn't speak, and now you
No,
can.
couldn't speak.
So, Ian, we've just come to 22, and
Yeah,
would
yeah.
you like to take us through
Yes, share the little
something?
methodology that you can all use. I'm sure everybody
Wonderful.
knows how to experience nature. Um, and experiencing nature is not thinking about nature. It's not actually having a feeling for nature. It's just about experiencing it. And so whenever I guide people into a natural space, um, we just start using the senses. So what I invite you to do, I mean, you can actually probably remember, some of you might have already done some of these things. Some of the things I do when I go into nature, and let's just see if some of you do this as well. When I walk into a new space I haven't been in before, I come into my garden, I look around and I try and see it. I try and see it as if for the first time. I try and notice it not from memory, but really look at how it is today. And the seasons help us to do that, because I can look at my garden in the spring. It's very different to when I look at it in the summer. It's very different to how I look at it in the autumn, and it's very different to how it looks in the winter. So being able to see nature as it is, hear, and you talked about hearing the birds. Hearing listening for the birds, listening for natural sounds like water, like children actually shouting in a park. That's a natural sound with nature. So, human sounds are natural sounds. Sometimes we call them noise, but noise is just a sound that annoys us. And that's really interesting to think about. So using the senses to see nature, hear nature, pick nature up. I always say pick things up that aren't alive, leave the things that are alive, but pick up what nature has discarded. Pick up a stick, pick up a snail shell, pick up a feather, pick up a leaf, and touch it. Touch moss on a tree, and really get a tactile experience as well. Smell it. I like to rub a stick in a lovely forest floor, and I smell the stick, and you get this lovely sort of bacterial smell, so it's called petrichor is the actual smell. It comes off the ground when it's damp, very fungal. So I love that smell. If I smell that, I start to connect immediately. But the aim is to just experience first through your senses. Walking through brings about another sense. It's a sense of direction. There's a sense of balance. Anything that helps us move through a natural space is a sense. So just connecting to all those senses that we're aware of, and that's experiencing. That's deep in our DNA. The first thing we ever did as a child when we were born was we experienced the in-breath. So what I do in nature, and I encourage you to do, is to go into a natural space using your senses, and then take that instinctive first breath in, which I call the refreshing in-breath. And then you release it. Release that breath. That's what I call the release. So a refreshing in-breath, and then a releasing out-breath. And at the moment, what we have like a pendulum. So a refreshing in-breath, and then releasing out-breath, and a refreshing in-breath. And it's kind of a pendulum. And to me, a pendulum is like a broken clock. When the hands fall down to the bottom, and then they're like a pendulum just swinging at the bottom. But a clock's cyclical, and nature is cyclical. Nature isn't a pendulum. We don't swing from one way to the next. We don't swing from one political party to the next political party. We should be going around in a cycle. So what I like people to focus on when they're breathing is a cycle. So a refreshing in-breath is the start of that cycle, breathing in, and then it comes up, and then you relax as it comes over, and then you allow it to release as it comes back down, and then you rest. And then you take that in-breath in again, which is a lovely refreshing in-breath as it comes up. Curves over as you relax, release, and rest again. And what I've done is I've attached those to the seasons. So the refreshing in-breath is the spring breath. It's the inspiration. You bring your refreshing spring breath in. You relax through the summer. We all love relaxing in the summer. And then you allow autumn to just start and release. Autumn releases all the leaves and wood that's no longer needed. And then you rest and hibernate through the winter, waiting for the next refreshing spring in-breath. Relax through the summer, release through the autumn, and rest through the winter. And that lovely breathing cycle, I like to align to things like a breeze in the trees or a wave lapping on a beach as the tide goes out and pauses, comes back in and pauses, goes out and pauses. It's a cycle. And yet, as human beings, we've kind of perceived life as just a swinging pendulum. And it's about bringing the energy back to life through cycles, matching with nature and cycles. So that breathing exercise is what I do after I've experienced. So I use the experience and I breathe. And then from that, in those pauses between the in-breath and the out-breath and the out-breath and the in-breath, I then connect through the heart to that, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I'm touching, what I'm smelling, what I'm tasting, what is out there that I'm starting to sense around me, which is the aliveness in nature. There is an aliveness in nature that we are usually unconscious of. Everything is alive in nature. There's an aliveness in us. And when we connect the aliveness in us with the aliveness in nature through the heart, having gone through the experiences first, we then get a greater understanding and a clearer understanding of what that means. And then if we just stay quiet and we pause, something magical happens. Once we've used our experiences, we've connected through the heart, we've understood through the mind. If we then stay silent, we tap into something that I call nature consciousness, and that's insight. And when that happens, and it doesn't happen every time I do it, but when that insight comes, you can guarantee I'm carrying a little journal with me, or I'm able to record what's happening, because everything I've done over the last 10 years has come from that process of experiencing through the senses, connecting through the heart, understanding through the mind, and then listening and sensing and reaching out for insight. That doesn't come from out there, it comes from in here, it comes from within. And then I write that down and I make a note of that. And that's a seed that I then nurture and I protect and I value. And a lot of those seeds germinated and a lot of those seeds grew into things like my walks, into things like my training courses, into Nature Connection World, the community. And my belief is that if other people follow that method, adopt it and adapt it to work for them, and there's other things you can do rather than just a breathing exercise. There's lots of different mindful exercises you can do in nature that allow you to go through that process. If you do that and you record it and then you act on those, what you write down, then you do something with that. You don't just share it with somebody over a coffee or tell people on Facebook you're going to do something. You actually go out and start doing that, but be guided by nature, be guided by nature consciousness, and magic happens then.
Beautiful, love it. And Karina was saying she loves the combination of being in nature and breath work.
Well, if you think about it, we breathe because of the very first disconnection we felt. The very first disconnection we felt was the cutting of our connection to our mother. And then we had to breathe on our own. So the very first experience of a disconnect, an absence of connection, was when we suddenly realized that there was no life force coming into us and we had to take that very first breath in, which is inspiring. It's the inspire, it's the first in-breath. And I did it so well that they gave me a certificate for it when I was born. It's my birth certificate. That's what my birth certificate is on the wall. It's the very first qualification I got. I breathed really well. You only get one. You only get one if you breathe. So all of you, if you've got a birth certificate, it means you breathed really well.
Excellent. So let's open it up to questions. Someone would like to ask a question. Karina, if you want to come on, just unmute yourself. If you want to have more of a chat about that breath work with Ian.
Well, as you know, I teach a bit of breath work, so yeah, I love the overlap. I didn't know if you wanted to touch in on the Fighton Sides, because I know that comes up a lot when I'm using my essential oils.
Yes,
The
yes.
benefit of the essential oils in the trees.
Yeah, the trees. Yes, trees give off. It's been discovered that trees have an immune system, and what they do is they shower the ground around them in this essential wood oil called a Fighton Side, which means plant killer. And actually that comes down and it keeps insect infestation away, and it keeps the overgrowth of other plants underneath the trees. It stops that, prevents that from strangling them or weakening them. But what scientists have discovered through doing experiments and studies with this is that when human beings detect Fighton Side in the atmosphere, so we breathe it in or we absorb it through our skin, a number of things happen. There's a drop in cortisol, which is the stress hormone. There's a reduction in blood pressure, but the most exciting thing is the natural killer cells, the white blood cells in the body, increase production. And so it's almost, I mean, and this is me putting meaning on it, and human beings putting meaning on nature, which to me is, it's interesting to do, but it doesn't mean it's true. For me, it could well be that our bodies are sensing that this is a mild, to humans, a mild thing, but it's reacting as if it wasn't. The body is creating more natural kill cells in order to protect us from the wood oil, the essential oil that's coming out of the trees. But the scientists don't know. That the wonderful thing is they really don't know. They have a hypothesis about it and they can think about it. But it's fascinating, and the studies show that that people respond to that. So just taking it like this group behind me, taking this group out in Finland, the amount of time we were underneath those trees. The lovely thing about it as well is that it lasts. So if you go out and you have an exposure to Fighton Sides, 20 minutes, and you can still see the effects of that. Nearly 30 days later, that the body is still has still responded to that for that 30 days. So a wonderful health and well-being opportunity that we don't really hear much about. It's only people like Karina and myself and others that are trying to bring this to people's attention. But of course, it's free, isn't it? We can all go and stand under trees and absorb that, and it doesn't cost us anything. It's like birdsong. You're saying about the birdsong. Birdsong stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, which means that we go onto that sort of rest, digest, relax kind of system that we should really be on. We tend to be on the sympathetic fight and flee and freeze system most of the time because we live in such an anxiety-driven world, a very kind of, we hardly know who we're around these days. It's not a natural environment. But our ancestors in the past would have heard birdsong and would immediately have realized that if the birds are singing, there's no danger in the forest. So birds singing and doing what birds naturally do, flying and singing around, then there's nothing there, because as soon as something comes into a forest that's a predator, the birds will go quiet or they'll start calling. And what I like to do is take a group of people into the forest and see if we can get into that state, that natural mindfulness state, where the birds start to behave as if we're not intruders in there. And that can happen quite quickly. They can get used to us and recognize that we're not a threat, and then they stop calling and they start just doing what they do. We affect their parasympathetic nervous system, and they affect our parasympathetic nervous system,
both
which
ways.
is how it should be.
That's it. And you mentioned about poetry, and Rose has put here that she loves to write poetry about nature. as she captures how I feel in that moment within nature. Rose, do you want to address, or Ian, do you want to address that and
Yeah,
to comment on that?
poetry, that's beautiful, Rose. Yeah, one of the things I try and encourage to do, and we were doing at Camp Out, actually, if you remember, we had open mic at Camp Out where people were coming up and reading their poetry, which was, and Karina, you were there as well. And it's such a lovely, it's so lovely to hear people speaking their poetry. You know, I remember at school, I used to read the poems in books. I never got to meet many of the poets. Some of them have probably passed by the time I was reading their books. But there's nothing better than hearing someone who's written that, speaking it. I like audiobooks for that reason, when the audiobook is read by the author. So you're hearing it coming from that. And poetry is such a lovely, wonderful gift for being able to connect people to those experiences and those understandings and those insights with just a few carefully chosen, specifically chosen words. I don't know if
Rose is brilliant. Rose is brilliant. You know,
does Rose want to add anything? But I love that she does that.
I hear a lot of Rose's poetry, and I just want to say that you're absolutely right. Through our skills, through our magic skills, and we share and connect with each other. And I hated poetry. I hated. I texted straight back to literature class at school, and I could never do it. And Rose has just drawn me so sweetly, beautifully into loving poetry. She just touches the button and off, don't you, Ray? You know, I've said it to you before. And she wrote the most beautiful, touching poetry, and that you're just there.
Well, that's
like,
that's the vibration. That's the vibration of Rose's energy. You know, and this is if you think, you know, we're talking on here, and the mind hears it as words, but the body picks it up and the heart picks it up as vibration. It's a vibration of sound. And when you are true to your nature, when you're as closely true to your nature as you can, when you speak words, it's the vibration that people connect to. That's why people say, oh, I resonate with that. We've suddenly got a vibrational word that we can all say, yes, it's about vibration. It's not just the words. I mean, we have wonderful, I mean, words in themselves are it's poetry. People have made sounds into actual words, but I like to create words. You know, I put words together, you know, nature consciousness and natural mindfulness. These most people don't know those words. And I say, well, I just put two words together and made a word. I talk about anxious excitement. I get anxiously excited every time I'm going to do something for the first time. So there's a bit of anxiousness, but there's also a bit of excitement. And the excitement keeps the anxiousness from getting too over anxious. And the anxiousness keeps the excitement from getting too overexcited. And so it's a lovely way to balance myself by putting those two words, those two expressions of anxious excitement together.
And I wanted to ask you, you know, you've changed from a very different corporate world to the world you're in these days. And do you ever sort of look back at your life and see that different Ian before and the person that you are today? I mean, do you ever notice the difference it's made to you, the change it's made to you, and how's your life changed these days?
I prefer having the me on the inside on the outside, because the me I remember being had the real me on the inside and a sort of a fabrication on the outside, and now I'm inside out now.
Love it.
It's funny, the other day I went out and my daughter said, oh yeah, she said, Dad, Ian said, Dad, she said, you've got your t-shirt on the wrong way around. And I just put it on inside out. And I said, oh, well, I think we all should be inside out sometimes. Let the inside out. Yeah.
Amazing. It's fun. I love your sweetness and sensitivity and just flow and connectedness. It's really beautiful. And I do strongly agree about it's all about connecting to your true selves in whatever form that takes for you. And that's where peace and harmony is, connecting to your true selves. So how do people get in contact with you? And they want to find out more, they perhaps want to come on one of your walks or come into the what was the Nature Connection? What was the group that
So yeah, so my community, which is the best place to come, my website's currently being rebuilt. So I don't want to direct people to the website at this time, but my community, which anybody's welcome to come and join. It's an alternative to Facebook. I have a Facebook presence. I have other presences there, but I signpost everybody to Nature Connection World. And how you find it is it's nature.connection. Sorry, start again. It's community.natureconnection.world. So it's about community, it's about nature connection, and it's about having a nature connection world. And with dots.
And I will be sending the link to everybody with this recording. It's either tonight or definitely by tomorrow. And I will be sending that link to get in touch with and join Ian's community. And what sort of things can people expect to find in your community? What goes on there?
Right, there's a growing group of people that are in there. Everybody that goes through my guide training course are invited to be on Nature Connection World. I've got lots of different people that come on looking for ways of creating and growing a deeper connection with nature, and people on there that are doing something, are offering something in terms of how to help, whether that's a walk or whether they provide something that's nature-based. And my aim is to create a community where people can come and share. So the aim is to come and share your connections. And I think there's quite a few people here that are already on Nature Connection World. And for me, it's a place that's safe. It's a place that I like to go to because it's quieter than all the other social media platforms. And every month we have a campfire conversation where I invite people to come and we just have an hour like this. We have an hour where we just chat with each other, and we have people from all over the world. We have Kev in New Zealand that's on all of them. So Kev's great. It's Kev's morning and my evening when we get on there. So if you want to be part,
it's not Facebook.
It's not. I think the best thing going for it is it's not Facebook. So if you don't, if you find, Facebook's great to signpost. I find as long as I only talk about nature connection, my Facebook is just all about nature connection. As soon as somebody comes on there and talks about something else, all of a sudden that something else gets in and infects it. And I would like to build Nature Connection World up, and us all go back into Facebook and infect Facebook with nature consciousness. That would be brilliant.
Yes.
Nature growing everywhere. Well, when nature does that, doesn't it? The mess that everybody's making of the world right now, take us out the equation for. I think somebody said you've only got to take humans out of the equation for. As long as we were in lockdown, and you start to see nature coming back, you start to see it all taking over. So I think nature's going to be fine without us. I'm not worried about that we're going to kill off nature, because that's just ridiculous. That's
infect the world with nature. I love that.
Infect the world with
that was
nature,
wonderful.
Nature consciousness, I think.
Nature consciousness, wonderful, Ian. And Ian, that was absolutely spectacular, and a really lovely journey into nature, reminding us about our true selves, the true nature with nature. And I think it's really lovely. Do go along and do Ian's courses, or get in touch, or be part of his community if you feel drawn, and go outside and take some of his suggestions. Ian, thank you so much, sweetheart. That was amazing. That's really lovely. I really enjoyed that. I hope everybody else here did too. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on another podcast at the PainFree Podcast, A Positive Future for Health. And we have lots more in the pipeline. Do watch out for your emails. But meanwhile, Ian, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks, everyone. Bless you.
I'll draw it to a close. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Ian.
Thank you.